Welcome to the C.M. Russell Museum. I'm Executive Director Tom Figuarelli, joined by artist Nancy Dunlop Cawdrey. Nancy, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, Tom.
We're obviously talking about Forever Glacier, your exhibition that's presently open here at the C.M. Russell Museum, and we're just so proud to be the first host of this exhibition.
Thank you. Yes, we are honored. We've been part of the museum family for a long time, and I couldn't be happier with the exhibit and the way it's put up.
Well, Nancy, the exhibit is filled with wonderful pieces featuring mammals in Glacier, and it tells an important story about Glacier and the effects climate change is having on the Glacier ecosystem. How did that inspire you?
Right, well, long ago, my husband and I took large groups, when we were allowed to have large groups, of kids up into Glacier Park, and these were kids from all over the country. And the park impacted me then in a way that I just didn't expect. I mean, to breathe that air and see the animals in the wild and introduce these city kids to this wonderful experience. These are national treasures we have all over this country with our national park system. So I can't say enough about what inspired that in the early American legacy. So it's awesome to try to depict that from an artist's point of view.
Well, excellent. Well, we're going to take a walk and have a little tour here of Forever Glacier.
Okay, this was not the first painting I did, but it's become sort of the icon of the exhibit, the Grizzly Bear. And I painted him with lots of color and hopefully motion. I love seeing him in the water. So this was the very first one, and yeah, great fun. Playing with the blues and oranges. I mean, from an artistic standpoint, it's harmonious, I hope. And not all of them are equally harmonious, but I think this one is. Some reflections, and I love seeing them gambling through the water with some reflections and looking for the next meal.
You know, powerful, graceful. You certainly have captured a lot of that with the grizzly. Do you find it's challenging to do that much detail on a single piece?
No, actually, it was a lot of fun. You know, once the form was established and I had some good photographs to work from. No, I mean, I haven't painted every bit of fur on him, but I painted enough, I think, to get the idea of the light hitting a grizzly bear. From 100 feet, it's definitely a grizzly bear. And you don't want to get any closer to a grizzly bear than that anyway. So.
Well, we have the exhibition organized into chapters. The first is Alpine Meadow.
Right, and these are ecosystems, separate ecosystems within the park. And the Alpine Meadow is up high, where Sperry Chalet used to be before it burned down, and now it's been rebuilt. So I painted this actually before the chalet burned down, and we had an overnight there. We got to go climb up and scramble around the glacier. It was awesome. So all these little critters live up there, including the marmots and the little mice, the deer mice, and here's the pika. That's probably the most popular small mammal in the park, and we get excited when we see him. He's tiny and very noisy. He squeaks and squeaks, and it's great fun to see them. So there's chipmunks and all of these are mammals, which is astounding. I mean, some of the mammals are only 1.5 inches high. So it was a fun piece to do, and I'm so glad I got to paint the chalet before it burned down. The next one is a wolverine, probably the hardest, toughest animal to get a sighting of in Glacier Park, and I had to go on. They're ferocious. I had to go on the internet and see a nocturnal video cam to find resources to look at for a young baby wolverine. They very often will nest. They'll put their babies in a hollow log or some such protected area, and they could probably very ferocious protecting their young too. And I have never seen one, but I've certainly met a lot of people who've seen them. And very hard to find in the park though.
People can't help but think about the goats
right.
In a glacier, right?
Iconic glacier animal. There's a Blackfoot legend that talks about the creator originally put the goat out in the prairie, pronghorns up on the rocks, and it didn't work very well because the goats couldn't outrun their predators and the pronghorns were slipping all over the rocks. So he changed them, and then that worked much better. So that's sort of the Blackfoot legend of that animal. Bighorn, I love seeing these. This was a fun one to do. Kind of broke out with color on this one because the horns, I love patterns of things. And he had sort of an imperious look. And you don't see them all that often. You have to get way up in the high country. But I had fun with the lime greens and the blues and the shadow area, and especially the patterns on the horn. And I wanted him to look like kind of king of the mountain. So this was an early piece I did probably around the time of the Glacier Park Centennial, which was 2010. And I started with this elk on the left, and then developed the eagle, which melded into the grizzly and into the moose. So I kind of wanted to show, I called it crown jewels because I thought, gosh, you know, they are the jewels of Glacier Park and many of the parks in the West, and they're all interconnected. They're all interconnected, and I wanted to show that in that piece. This piece took me about 10 months to do, 9 months maybe gestation period. History of the park. We had some wonderful sponsors who participated, and by the way, all of these pieces were sponsored by a wonderful group of people who believed enough in the exhibit to pay it forward and help defray some of the cost of the framing and the storage, et cetera, et cetera. So, and it's got the whole history. We've got 2 Indian tribes involved in the park here on this side, the Park Service piece, the flicker, et cetera, et cetera. There's that wonderful iconic bridge in the park. The Going to the Sun Road, this was in commemoration of the building of the road, which was about the time women got the vote. So that was important for me to put in. The Great Northerns here, and I had a lot of fun. The Rotary Club, the Canadians, the history of the park hopefully is in this piece. And this resides usually at the Hockaday Museum. And some of the people, I was looking at the plaque, just reminding myself of who helped sponsor this one, and some of them, including a former board member of the museum, Phil Drescher, is no longer with us, and there are a number of sponsors of that piece who are no longer with us, so that's been 10 years ago. This piece, Where Earth Meets Sky, I think it's more about maybe I love that expression, I think it's an Indian expression. They consider the Glacier Park the backbone of creation, the Blackfeet people, so it was fun to put these little pockets of family members, including fish there, the elk, the bear, and amazing skies you can see in Glacier Park. Next one, we enter the river bottom of Glacier Park. So you don't necessarily think of fox in the river bottom, but they do live, that's one of the ecosystems they live in. I love seeing fox in the wild, and you do get to see them whether you're in Glacier Park or out where we are in Flathead Valley. I think it's my favorite animal to see in the wild.
And Nancy, you've mentioned the significance of Glacier to the Blackfeet people, and I think what is just so profound for what you've done with the exhibition is put the common name of each mammal, the scientific name, as well as the Blackfeet name. What was kind of the thought process?
Right, well, early on in the exhibit, my husband and I worked a lot with teenagers, and we were counseled and helped by a Blackfoot medicine man from Canada, and I used to just listen to him. His name was George Goodstriker, and Veenhold Rice painted actually one of his ancestors. So it's been part of we went to sun dances, we were certainly part of that, and we just felt it was an important, integral part of their home. I mean, the Blackfeet people, this was their home, Glacier Park, so it was important. The Latin, don't ask me to pronounce any of them. And the Blackfeet, Mugatadue. I probably just butchered it, but hey, that's the Blackfeet pronunciation, and it's a beautiful language. My husband, we went over to the Blackfoot Reservation and visited a school where they're still teaching the language to young children. And we got some cards and things, so I'm going to show my grandkids some of that, teach them some of the words. Yeah, that was important. The white-tailed deer, the bane of Montana highways, right? But up in Glacier, they're more protected. Everybody's probably hit one in their lifetime if they've lived here in Montana for any time. But they're pretty majestic, and I love watching them run off with their tails flagging, their white tails flagging. That's how you know the difference between a white tail and a mule deer. is that white tail. So I enjoyed doing the nocturne too. That was kind of a fun deviation.
Was that the only nocturne in the piece?
The coyote and the deer, I think, are the only two. Yeah, I think so.
Well, certainly anybody who's backpacked in Glacier in the evenings or even just driven through on Highway 2 can appreciate the landscape transforms at night, and so do the animals.
Yes, indeed. Indeed. Love that moonlight, too. This one was fun to do, just all the critters that swim around in the waters of Glacier Park. Badgers and beavers and the fish. The fish are obviously not a mammal, but I had to put some in. I just couldn't help myself. The otters, the weasels, and there's a little bat that's flying up there because a bat, of course, is a mammal who nurses its young. We don't think about that, but they sure do. Oh, there's a trillium for those people who know wildflowers. I did put wildflowers throughout the exhibit too, if there was Indian paintbrush, depending on time of year and so forth, because I like to be able to identify those things too. It was fun doing silk painting with underwater. I was like, okay, how do I do that? How do I accomplish this? There's several pieces that are in the snow. The moose is one, the lynx, and some small mammals down the other way. I was in Glacier Park painting one time near one of the lodges and in oil, and there were swarms of things coming, and I was really focused, and I looked up and there was a mother moose and its young coming down to the water within about probably 8 feet, 10 feet of myself, and I stood very still, didn't move a muscle, because I didn't want her to feel threatened at all, because they can do some damage with their hooves. But she passed by and took her young down into the water, and off they went. But it was pretty awesome. I'd never been up that close to a moose before. They are huge. Their legs were, I felt like her legs were up to my nose. They were so long. Bobcat. And a lot of us have had the great pleasure of seeing bobcat in nature. I've seen one, but not this close up. I had to refer to some wonderful photographs of them. You know, they're born with very blue eyes, which you can see here. So I better do my research when I do these, and then gradually, as they get older, they have more of the traditional cat eye kind of color, that yellow-green color. But sweet, and they often have 2 or 3 kits, and they're very good mothers. Wolf packs in Glacier Park. So there are 5 or 6 wolf packs that have been reintroduced. I think they disappeared for a while in the park, but they have been reintroduced, and they're doing quite well, I believe, and they live up in the high country. So this is the first one I did of the large mammals of Glacier Park, and I could have just done one wolf, but they are such pack animals. I said, no, I'm going to do in a pack. So don't ask me which one is the alpha female. Maybe the one on the left. She's got that look about her. Don't mess with me. So mountain lions, yeah, and these were fun to do. Again, they start out with the blue eyes and they gradually go to the yellow-green. And I wanted to do one in snow, and I was trying to figure out how do I depict them as if there is snow coming down on them. That was kind of fun to do with a toothbrush and some acrylic ink, and splatter that snow on them after I'd finished the painting. I sort of covered their eyes so I didn't get a lot of snow flecks in their eyes, because I wanted their eyes to read well.
So that's interesting. You mentioned acrylic ink. I mean, you're obviously working primarily with dyes.
Transparent, right?
Is this the one piece that features some ink?
No, there are others that do. The next one does, definitely. The acrylic ink are these very bright, opaque colors. That red, this looks very transparent to me, but this red, that green spot there, that nose on that little guy, those are definitely acrylic ink, and I did use it on some others, which I'll show you. The coyote has quite a bit of acrylic ink. Acrylic is sort of it's an artificial plastic sort of paint, but it's kind of neat because you can get those brilliant, non-transparent colors, which sometimes are important, I think, to creating a piece.
And I should mention, this is the old growth forest ecosystem.
Yes, thank you,
These
thank you,
5 pieces.
thank you, yes. The Canadian lynx, so Canada lynx, I'm sorry, I better get that right. A nice fellow that I met, a photographer, retired teacher, let me use his resource, and I really wanted to depict the lynx as accurately as I possibly could. The pattern on the fur and so forth, it was great fun. And he was standing in the snow, and I didn't paint anything in the background because I said, no, I'm just gonna, the lynx is gonna say it all. They're amazing, huge, big paw prints, and they can go through snow with no problem whatsoever. And they're very hard to see because they mostly are active. Well, they camouflage in the other seasons, but in the snow, you're most likely to see them when it's snowy because at least they have some contrast to that. But they're pretty amazing animals. They're bigger. I think it's the most endangered mammal in the US, as I think I read. This one was fun to do. All the little critters that live in the old growth forest and burrow into logs and underground. There's the long-tailed weasel and the porcupine. I had to figure out, okay, how do I get a porcupine? I can't have them all on the bottom. So I had to make sure I knew that little baby porcupines could climb up on stuff. They can. And the bats, not the bats, I'm sorry, the flying squirrels are at the top there. You don't think again about them maybe being mammals, but they are, and they're very adaptive. There's the raccoons. Those guys have given me some trouble on camping trips, but they're pretty cute. Yeah, lots of acrylic ink on this